Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Brian Liddy and I'm here with today's news. Ukrainian update, day 75. Russia's ambassador to Poland has been pelted with red paint thrown at him by people protesting against the war in Ukraine as he went to lay flowers at the Soviet military cemetery in Warsaw on the anniversary of the Allied victory over Nazi Germany in 1945. Video footage released by Russian news agencies showed Sergei Andreev and several other men with paint on their clothes and faces surrounded by a crowd, some holding Ukrainian flags. In other videos of the incident circulating online, anti-war activists can be heard chanting "fascists" and "murderers." Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that 60 people who were sheltering in a school in Bilohorivka, near the eastern city of Luhansk, were killed when Russian forces bombed it this weekend. The UN has condemned the attack, with Secretary-General Antonio Guterres saying he was appalled by it. More than 170 civilians were successfully evacuated from the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol and have arrived in Zaporizhzhia. My apologies for my poor pronunciation. I'll start that again. More than 170 civilians were successfully evacuated from the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol and have arrived in Zaporizhzhia. Officials said more than 600 people have been evacuated from the plant and from Mariupol in total. Members of Ukraine's Azov battalion, trapped inside the Azovstal steel plant, meanwhile, said they fear that they will be killed if captured by Russian forces, as they pleaded with Ukrainian authorities to help arrange their extraction. Speaking to the media from inside the besieged steelworks, Lieutenant Ilya Samoylenko vowed to fight on, saying that surrender would be a gift to the enemy. America's top diplomat to Ukraine, Kristina Kvian, arrived with her team in Kiev on Sunday in a step towards resuming the country's presence in the capital. The visit was timed to commemorate Victory in Europe Day. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised new weapons and other equipment for Ukraine as a surprise visit to the country, during which he toured Irpin, a Kiev suburb, and scene of some of the worst early attacks by Russia. The US President's wife, Jill Biden, met with Ukraine's First Lady, Olena Zelenska, on an unannounced visit on Sunday. The US has unveiled a new layer of sanctions on Russia, targeting services, Russia's propaganda machine, and its defence industry. They are primarily intended to close loopholes in the existing sanctions and to tighten the noose around the Russian economy by another few notches. The UK government has expanded its sanctions against Russia to include punitive import tariffs on Russian precious metals, as well as export bans on certain UK products to increase the economic pressure on Moscow. UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has accused Putin's regime of mirroring the actions of the Nazis as the Russian leader staged a military parade to celebrate Russia's Second World War victory. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, is set to travel to Berlin for talks with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Monday and to make a major address. Excuse me. Elsewhere in the news, Vladimir Putin has told Russian soldiers they are fighting for the same thing their fathers and grandfathers did, as he used his Victory Day speech to justify his invasion of Ukraine. As Putin sought to rally his country through the memory of the Second World War, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pushed back in his own address from Kiev. "We will not allow anyone to annex this victory. We will not allow it to be appropriated," he said. The dual speeches marked a closely watched anniversary in Eastern Europe, where Russia has used claims it is fighting fascism to justify its bombardment of cities such as Mariupol and Kiev, and to launch the largest military campaign in Ukraine since the 1940s. Prior to the speech, Prior to the speech, foreign officials had said Putin could use it to launch a full mobilization of Russian troops or formally declare war in Ukraine, but there were no large policy announcements. Instead, he suggested Russia was forced into the war by NATO and pledged to provide aid for the families of soldiers who had died in what the Kremlin is calling a special operation. Speaking at the 77th annual celebration of the defeat of Nazi Germany, the Russian president launched a defense of his war in Ukraine, pivoting from a recognition of Russia's greatest generation to a description of how it was believed Ukraine was being armed by the West for imminent attack on Crimea, the peninsula annexed by Russia in 2014. Putin also described the war as sacred. The defence of the motherland, its fate was being decided, has always been sacred, Putin said, speaking of the Second World War. And now you are fighting for our people in the Donbass, for the security of our homeland, Russia. The muted speech came in stark contrast to that delivered by Zelensky, who delivered a recorded address to a piano accompaniment as he walked through central Kiev past anti-tank barricades. This is not a war of two armies, he said. This is a war of two world views, a war waged by barbarians who believe that their missiles can destroy our philosophy. In the speech, Zelensky took aim at Russian claims Ukraine had sought to block the 9th of May celebrations, a focus of Russian state media in advance of the holiday. Our enemy dreamed that we would refuse to celebrate the 9th of May and the victory over Nazism, said Zelensky, so that the word denazification will have a chance to succeed on the day of victory over Nazism. We are fighting for a new victory. The road to it is difficult, but we have no doubt that we will win. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on the international community to take immediate steps to end a Russian blockade of his country's ports, to allow wheat exports and prevent a global food crisis. The President made his comments in an online post after speaking to European Council President Charles Michel, who was visiting the city of Odessa, a major Black Sea port for the exporting of agricultural products. Excuse me. It is important to prevent a food crisis in the world caused by Russia's aggressive actions, Zelensky wrote on the Telegram messaging app. Immediate measures must be taken to unblock Ukrainian ports for wheat exports. He did not specify what measures he would likely take. NATO countries, including the United States, have ruled out armed intervention for fear of triggering a wider war. Michel, who chairs summits of the European Union's national leaders, wrote on Twitter that he had seen silos full of grain, wheat and corn in Odessa that was ready for export, but blocked because of the Russian invasion and the blockade of Black Sea ports since 24th of February. Excuse me. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said last week the problem of global food security cannot be solved without restoring Ukrainian agricultural production to the world market. Ukraine was the world's fourth largest exporter of maize or corn in the 2021 season and the number six wheat exporter according to International Grains Council data. But nearly 25 million tonnes of grains are now stuck in Ukraine, a UN Food Agency official said on Friday. Ukrainian agriculture officials say the exportable surplus is around 12 million tonnes, and agricultural analysts have said Ukraine's stocks are so high that there will not be enough room to store the new harvest when it comes. Ukraine has sown about 7 million hectares of spring crops so far this year, or 25 to 30% less, in the corresponding period of 2021. I'm so sorry. Now my earpiece is falling out. I'm so sorry. I'll go back a bit. Ukraine's stocks are so high that there will not be enough room to store the new harvest when it comes. Ukraine has sown about 7 million hectares of spring crops so far this year, or 25 to 30% less than in the corresponding period of 2021. My apologies. I feel like Theresa May. Her letters falling off the wall behind me. Probably. Okay. Ukraine has sown about 7 million hectares of spring crops so far this year, or 25 to 30% less than in the corresponding period of 2021. Agriculture Minister Mykola Solsky said earlier today. He underlined the importance of exports of Ukrainian grain via Romania, where they are being taken by rail, but said those exports could be complicated in 2 months by exports of the new wheat crop in Romania and Bulgaria. The Democratic Unionist Party is to seek an urgent meeting with Boris Johnson to warn him it will stall power sharing at Stormont until Christmas if the Northern Ireland Protocol is not modified. A senior party official said it will push the responsibility for Stormont back onto the Prime Minister. We will say he has a choice, Stormont or the Protocol, they said. The ultimatum came as the UK Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, pledged to do whatever necessary to alter the protocol, which mandates checks on goods crossing into Northern Ireland from Great Britain. But the DUP's trust in the Conservative Party, which was already at a low ebb, was shattered last week when the Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis, hinted the government was pulling back from threats to introduce laws to unilaterally disapply parts of the protocol. Mr. Lewis, who was meeting with the leaders of Northern Ireland's political parties today, said in a statement, "We have to address the outstanding issues relating to the Northern Ireland Protocol, and we want to do that by agreement with the EU. But, as we have always made clear, we will not shy away from taking further steps if necessary." Some commentators are wondering if the Democratic Unionist Party's threats to block the formation of a new power-sharing executive has more or at least as much to do with Sinn Féin's historic victory in the Stormont Assembly elections as it has to do with the Northern Ireland Protocol. The EU has warned the UK to dial down the rhetoric and start being honest to voters about the Northern Ireland Brexit Protocol. The EU Vice President, Maros Sefcovic, said the EU is keen to find solutions. "We need the UK government to dial down the rhetoric, be honest about the deal they signed, and agree to find solutions within its framework," he said in a statement. The EU has already shown a lot of flexibility by proposing impactful, durable solutions, and we stand ready to continue discussions. The Irish Taoiseach, Michael Martin, claimed the flexibility shown by the EU has not been reciprocated, suggesting its recent threats over unilateral action to disapply some of the checks on goods crossing the Irish Sea had made the EU more cautious. He said he would like to think the UK government would continue to approach the issue with a determination to get the matter resolved sensibly, adding that the Irish government would help to facilitate this. The politics of this is more problematic than resolving the actual trading issues around the protocol, they said. Talks between Maros Sefcovic and the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss were paused in the run-up to the Stormont election. They are due to restart. The EU indicated that there was room for a deal, but the UK needed to show the will to get something over the line. The talks are likely to continue for some months. The Royal Bank of Scotland, PMI, published today, shows business activity accelerated for the fourth consecutive month in April. The Royal Bank of Scotland Business Activity Index, a measure of combined manufacturing and service sector output, rose. Sorry, could you repeat that? I'll start that story again. The Royal Bank of Scotland Purchase Managers Index published today shows business activity accelerated for the fourth consecutive month in April. The Royal Bank of Scotland Business Activity Index, a measure of combined manufacturing and service sector output, rose to 58.9 in April, up from 58.4 in March, indicating a faster increase in private sector output. The latest increase was supported by a strong performance in manufacturing, although services activity continues to expand. Responding to the latest PMI data, Economy Secretary Kate Forbes welcomed the resilience of Scottish businesses, with employment continuing to grow and activity improving in the fourth month in a row to reach an 11-month high. Ms Forbes emphasised that the Scottish Government is committed to helping business recovery and has provided more than £4.7 billion in support since the beginning of the pandemic, including around £1.6 billion in rates relief, which includes a continuation of 50% retail, hospitality and leisure rates relief for the first 3 months of 2022-23, capped at £27,500 per ratepayer. The Economy Secretary said, "We have also maintained the UK's most generous small business bonus scheme, which, as of the 1st of June 2021, has taken over 111,000 properties out of rates altogether." Despite this, it is clear that rising prices are presenting challenges for businesses as well as households. Many of the powers required to tackle the current cost of living, including energy, are reserved to the UK Government, which has failed to provide adequate support to businesses in need. The UK Government must use the Queen's speech tomorrow to do more to support businesses throughout the cost of living crisis, she said. The SNP has reiterated its calls for an emergency budget to deal with the UK's cost of living crisis ahead of Tuesday's return to Parliament. The party's shadow chancellor, Alison Thewliss, said the UK government had so far done nothing to support the people being hit hardest by the spiralling crisis and demanded strong action from the Queen's speech. The calls follow an appeal from the British Chamber of Commerce for an emergency budget, demanding action to support businesses and families. Commenting, Alison Thewliss MP said, "The Tories have so far done nothing to support the families and households bearing the brutal brunt of this Tory-made cost of living crisis. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, too mired in sleaze and scandal to focus on the issues of the day, have directly plunged millions more into poverty and destitution, and without government action, that number will increase exponentially." Next week's Next week's return to the House presents the UK Government with an opportunity to finally bring forward real legislation to support those who are struggling, an introduction of the real living wage, the turning of the paltry energy support loan into a more generous grant, and a UK-wide child payment would all be a good start. There are families who cannot afford to wait much longer and businesses on the brink of going bust. The Tories must stop sitting on their hands and get on with their job of helping the country through this crisis. Scotland has the largest share of UK exports of food and drink products, with the industry in Scotland making up 1/3 of total exports out of the UK, making the sector worth £5.7 billion. A report from the Food and Drink Federation, or the FDF, shows Scotland's food and drink sector has grown significant growth and is recovering from the impacts of the pandemic. FDF has said Scotland's industry continues to punch above its weight. Exports of salmon increased by 20.6%, while those of whisky rose by 18.6%. France has overtaken the US as Scotland's biggest trading partner. Commenting, Jim Fairley, MSP for Perthshire South and Kinrothshire, said, "Scotland's world-renowned food and drink sector is one of the strongest industries in the country and only continues to go from strength to strength by making up a large chunk of the UK market for products like salmon and whisky." Despite the challenges that the pandemic and Brexit have caused businesses, they have shown they are resilient and have continued on an upward trajectory by building existing markets and finding new ones in places like China. Mr. Fairley went on to say, Food and drink businesses in Scotland have taken a hammering from the Tories at Westminster with their disastrous Brexit and trade deals that have undercut Scotland's high-quality products. We cannot trust the Tories to protect the future of Scotland's food and drink sector. He added, this also shows that Scotland already has the world-class produce to compete on the world stage, and why would we continue to punch above our weight as an independent... Forgive me, I'll say that again. He added, this also shows that Scotland already has the world-class produce to compete on the world stage, and shows why we would continue to punch above our weight as an independent country. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon will underline Scotland's key interests in global issues when she visits the United States next week. The visit shows the launch of Scotland's Global Affairs Framework, which sets out the values, principles and priorities underpinning the Scottish Government's work to become more active internationally. Reflecting on the impacts of Brexit, COVID-19, the climate crisis and the invasion of Ukraine, the framework outlines key areas of focus such as global citizenship, maintaining close relations with the EU, gender equality and respect for human rights. The First Minister will take part in a range of engagements focused on the interlinked issues of climate, energy security and The First Minister will take part in a range of engagements focused on the interlinked issues of climate, energy security and the war in Ukraine, including a keynote speech at the Brookings Institute in Washington, D.C. She will also meet with key congressional groups and discuss ways to create greener, fairer and more equitable economy with executives of companies operating across the Atlantic. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said, the COVID-19 pandemic and climate and biodiversity emergencies prove in the starkest possible way that we live in an interconnected world, and it is more important than ever that Scotland plays its part. The crisis in Ukraine underlines how interconnected these challenges are, and all countries have a role to play in meeting them. We are determined that Scotland continues to be a good global citizen, making a constructive contribution to addressing global challenges such as climate change. Our international activity creates opportunities at home, broadens our horizons, attracts high-quality investment and ultimately benefits our people. No more evident than in Scotland's long-standing relationship and strong trade ties with the USA, which this visit will build upon further. By being open and connected and making a positive contribution internationally, we give ourselves the greatest possible chance of building a successful country. In this way, we can make a contribution to the world that is welcomed, valued and helps us all. Excuse me. There are renewed calls for the UK government to put pressure on India to release Jagtar Singh Johal from Dumbarton after the UN working group ruled he had been arbitrarily detained by India and his detention lacked any legal basis. Boris Johnson said that he had raised the case when he met the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi last month and provided a written note of consular cases, but Foreign Office ministers have not confirmed whether they regard his detention as arbitrary. Mr. Johal was arrested after his wedding in the Punjab in November 2017, accused of helping to fund a Sikh on Hindu assassination plot, something that he and his family strongly deny. In what is being described as a watershed moment in the case, the UN panel on arbitrary detention concluded that the continued pre-trial detention of Mr. Johal lacks legal basis and is arbitrary because he was abducted by plainclothes officers without an arrest warrant, held incommunicado and denied consular assistance or access to a lawyer. They observed that there is no judicially admissible evidence against Mr. Johal, despite intelligence agencies having over 3 years to investigate, and conclude that the appropriate remedy would be to release Johal immediately. Jagtar Singh Johal has claimed he was tortured and forced to sign a blank confession statement, and then had extra charges laid against him that had now reached a total of 9 cases. He was transferred to Naba Maximum Security Prison, where he remained until the 25th of May 2019, before being transferred to a prison in Delhi. The UN report says that despite being in jail for more than 4 years, he has not been charged and no admissible evidence has been produced. The report by the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention claims Johal was targeted because of his activities as a Sikh practitioner and supporter, and because of his activism writing public posts calling for accountability for alleged actions committed against Sikhs by the authorities. It adds that he was deprived of his liberty on discriminatory grounds owing to his status as a human rights defender and based on his political activism, religious faith, and opinions. The Indian government denies torture and says it is still compiling evidence in the cases. Jagtar's brother, Gurpreet Singh Johal, has been fighting for his release. He said, "We've known from the start that there's no good reason for Jagtar's imprisonment, and in 4 years the Indian authorities haven't produced any evidence against him. The UK government hasn't listened to us, but perhaps it will listen to the UN and call for his release. There have been so many setbacks, but on a day like this, we are dreaming of the moment my brother steps off a plane in Scotland to be reunited with his family." Young people struggling to access employment will be supported by an additional £4 million through the Young Persons Guarantee. The funding will help young people impacted most by the pandemic, including those who are care experienced and those experiencing mental health issues. The programmes will share the £4 million, which will connect people with employers, training and volunteering opportunities. The Young Persons Guarantee is a commitment to bring together employers, partners and young people. It aims to connect every 16 to 24-year-old in Scotland to an opportunity. This could be a job, apprenticeship, further education or higher education, training or volunteering. This additional funding for the Young Persons Guarantee will be shared between 3 programmes. The first is Inspiring Scotland will receive £2.6 million towards their Our Future Now programme, which offers young people the opportunity to take part in work placements, shadowing and interview training. The second is the Young People's Consortium Action for Children, Bernardo's and Prince's Trust, which will receive £1.4 million to help young people with experience of the care systems secure full-time employment. The third one is Volunteering Matters, in partnership with the Scottish Association for Mental Health, or SAMH, will receive £97,000 towards their work to support young people in Glasgow, including those experiencing mental health issues, to gain access to formal volunteering opportunities. Minister for Youth Employment and Training, Jamie Hepburn, said, "We want all of our young people to succeed, no matter their background or circumstances. Our aim is to ensure those seeking work have access to valuable support and opportunities for years to come. We know that many young people may face additional barriers to successfully gaining permanent work, and the uncertainty caused by the pandemic, combined with the cost of living crisis, has made this more challenging. By connecting young people seeking work directly with employers, we can offer them potentially life-changing opportunities. This additional support is on top of £15 million already allocated to local authorities through the Young Persons Guarantee for the current year, and will build on our strong record of tackling youth unemployment," he said. Excuse me again. Applications are now invited for a fund to support Scottish food and drink suppliers and producers to invest in future growth. The Annual Food Processing, Marketing and Cooperation Grant Scheme, the FPMC, enables investment across a range of projects, including buildings and equipment, feasibility studies, cooperative ventures and the improvement of supply chain efficiency. A total of £10.2 million is available in this financial year to support initiatives that will safeguard jobs and increase efficiency within the sector. Rural Affairs Secretary Mary Gudjon said, "Our food and drink sector creates incredible produce that is enjoyed at home and abroad. The FPMC scheme has enabled some really exciting projects, and I know this funding round will be no different. As well as encouraging innovation and cooperation, the scheme will help sustain and create jobs in our rural communities, which have been particularly hard hit by the damaging impact of Brexit. It will also help new and experienced exporters move into emerging markets and ensure long-term viability," she said. A new centre of expertise in equality and human rights to put human rights and equality at the heart of economic policy development is being established. The centre, an action from Scotland's National Strategy for Economic Transformation, will see government working with leading experts to build knowledge and skills among policy officials to address injustice and economic inequality. The new Centre of Expertise in Equality and Human Rights will be part of the Office of Chief Economic Advisor within the Scottish Government and will be structured around an internal policy network to share examples of good practice more effectively across government. The First Minister's National Advisory Council on Women and Girls had previously recommended that equality and human rights centres be established across the Scottish Government. Economy Secretary Kate Forbes said, "Our vision for Scotland is to create a wellbeing economy where our society is thriving economically, socially and environmentally, and in which we deliver prosperity for all Scotland's people and places. The Centre for Expertise in Equality and Human Rights will advance our understanding of equality and human rights should influence the economic policy-making process. This includes work in an area to remove barriers to employment for disabled people, women with care experience and minority ethnic groups, while also tackling poverty through fair pay and conditions." And that was our final story for this evening. As you've probably noticed, we don't have any guests, but if you could perhaps consider funding what we do here at Broadcasting Scotland, then we would be much obliged. You can see the address for our crowdfunder below at the bottom of the screen. It's go to www.broadcastingscotland.scot/donate. Anything that you can spare would be gratefully appreciated. If you do already support us in that way, then we're very grateful and we thank you for that. Tomorrow, we're going to have Ruth Watson hosting the show. And so I'm looking forward to that very much. I hope that you are too. And we'll see you then tomorrow evening. In the meantime, good night and we'll see you then.